everybody probably comes into this talk with a little bit different knowledge of what is called core in fitness, in the fitness arena. Have you guys learned core in sport? You know, like coaches talking about it, or?
Just do sit-ups.
Okay, and that's kind of how you would define it, is doing sit-ups and stuff. How about you, Taylor?
You know, we're just always taught to do different forms of ab workouts.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you define, how do you know core?
Core I know a little bit about from dance, where you're to engage your core if you're to balance and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But it's always gonna suck you in.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
Harmony.
yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it makes it hard to balance that way.
Do you know why?
I don't know, no.
I'll tell you.
You're gonna tell us.
Yeah. You know, the technology has changed in the understanding of how our balance system works. And the technology comes out of understanding how to help people get better from low back injury. So spine stabilization, that's what it's all about. Creating an environment where your spine isn't doing any work. It's creating an environment of what's considered spine stiffness. You know, in yoga and Pilates, in fitness and dance, there's oftentimes a lot of emphasis in becoming super flexible and being able to bend and meld in many directions. That's okay, sports specifically, as long as you understand how to control the muscles that surround your spine. A lot of times high-end athletes have an innate gift, or they understand it without being taught. It's just something that they know. Other athletes figure it out after they've gone through an injury. And they have to learn how to control specific muscle groups to overcome the injury. Then they're delivered what's considered core. You could literally say that the definition of core encompasses 21 different groups of muscle that all cross the pelvis. So it's pretty involved. And if you say to someone, look, I want you to control your latissimus or your back muscle, I want you to control your glutes, I want you to control your obliques, I want you to control transverse abdominis, all these muscles, I want you to control those and perform your sport. That's a lot. That's a lot to think about. Good luck with that. So there's a gentleman at Waterloo University in Canada who is considered the utmost authority in spine rehabilitation. He's a scientist. He's not a medical doctor. He's a PhD, and he's a research analyst that most of the information that trickles into the fitness arena or medical arena in spine rehabilitation comes from this fella. And if it hasn't come from him, he's usually okayed the information that's come out of the World Health Organization. So his name is Stuart McGill. The packet that I put together, I'm not going to follow it. It's just information for you guys to carry after we have a discussion basically on this. And the goal is to understand core, how to control it, and it's crazy how easy it is to learn how to do it. The difficult part is practicing it enough so it becomes what's called subcortical, or without thought. It becomes just a secondary reflex to any movement you're going to make. So it's all about training a reflex. Core is. This is what's missed in fitness. The fine intricacies of what core, it's been bastardized, the word. So in a sense, it has to do with reflexing to an unknown stimulus. So if you're outside and you walk out of a door and there's a patch of black ice and you don't know it, and you slip. The reflex that keeps you from falling is called sensory motor, or it's your body's awareness of where you are in space and what muscle groups need to contract and relax to keep you balanced. But it comes from the hub, your center. And if this is loosey-goosey, if your ribs and your pelvic girdle are separate and functioning at different times in different directions, you're going to hit the deck. So the whole goal is to link the ribs to the hip. And how do you do it? Why would you do it? Here's an interesting diagram. Consider that pole, that vertical line is a pole, right? A and B are grommets in the ground. If you want the pole to stand up straight, and you want it to be really stiff and weather any sort of stimulus, heavy wind, something running into it, where would you draw a cable line? Would you draw it to B, or would you draw it to A in order to make the pole stiff? A? How come?
White base.
Yeah. What happens when you do abdominal hollowing, or you draw your abdominals in? It would be putting cables to B, which makes this pole, which is a symbol of what your spine would be, it makes the pole unstable. The wider you can make your center, the more stability you'll have. So Stuart McGill, the man that's quoted in this packet, he talks about it as abdominal bracing, not core, because core now has been disseminated through many channels and has different definitions everywhere. Abdominal bracing has to do with not blowing out, not sucking in, but laterally increasing your width or your girth. I don't know if anybody's watched UFC fighting or boxing, and if you've seen a really in-shape boxer or UFC fighter, from the front, they're real wide and blocky. From the side, they're thin. The wide blocky has to do with medicine ball training, where they're slamming the ball into their gut, and they have to brace. Otherwise, the ball would hit them in the organs. So they learn to create this stiffness and increase the intra-abdominal pressure that way. If they blow out, here, that's why I want my cool shirt. If you do that, all you're doing is putting a big arch in your back. But if you blow out this way, you increase the lateral stability, but you also do a cinching, which increases the tension here. The cool part about how the body's built, if you look at this diagram, this third page, and you look at how these are the deepest muscles that you own. And if you look at how they're laid out, the feathering, all heads in the direction of out, towards the outside of the body. It's because when it contracts, what it literally does is it does a cinching, a decompression of the spine. If these are in shape, you have decompression. A lot of spine issues come from compression. So when we put all the bigger layers on top, so if that's the spine, you have lat muscles that come down attach into your lower back. You have these big lat muscles in here. And then you have this triangle. It's a white layer of connective tissue. It's really tough. But it links your glutes. So your butt muscles. It links them in this giant X. And when you do this cinching, because everything basically kind of converges in these oblique muscles. Everything converges to the center here. When you do the cinching, you make these muscles active. So you've got great big muscles that create an X to give you stability, and you've got all these little bitty muscles working to do stability also, all at different times, depending on what your movement is. So core is actually super complicated, right? And when you're going to get ready to do a core class on a ball that's unstable, and the first thing that you're told is to suck your belly button in, draw your belly button in. Now let's go on a 360-degree unstable surface. Well, based on that, and this, it's opposite. Wouldn't that be a dangerous thing to do? And open you up to injury. So you're learning core motor patterns by sucking the belly button in, or blowing your tummy out. If you're not getting this going, your obliques going. So what you should do is stand up. Let's see. Usually what I'll do is I'll walk around and stuff my finger on your sides. I won't do that, I promise. But what you do in order to prepare for this and get your brain linked to the right musculature is basically, it's called fascial raking. So all you do is kind of rake. So if you have your six pack, you rake outside. And you stimulate or link your brain to this area. And you can be kind of mean to yourself and irritate these a little bit. It'll make it harder or easier for your brain to link to it.